Arnold Schwarzenegger arrived in America broke, with no connections, and didn't speak English. They said he'd never make it. He became a champion, a movie star, and a governor. Arnold was born in a tiny Austrian village after World War II. His family was poor. His house had no plumbing, no heating, not even a proper bed. His father was strict, even abusive. But Arnold had a dream. He wanted more. At 15, he saw a bodybuilding magazine and made a decision. He would go to America and become the best. People laughed at him. His family told him it was impossible. But Arnold didn't listen. He trained relentlessly. At 18, he was in the military. He even went AWOL just to compete in his first bodybuilding contest. He won. At 21, he made it to America. No money, no English, just a thick accent, a dream, and an unstoppable work ethic. People mocked his voice. Casting directors rejected him. They said his name was too weird and his body was too big for Hollywood. But Arnold refused to quit. He trained harder. He became the youngest Mr. Olympia winner at 23 and won 7 titles. But he wasn't done. He set his sights on Hollywood. They told him no one would watch a movie with him as the lead. Then came Conan the Barbarian, and he became the biggest action star in the world. And still, he wasn't done. In 2003, Arnold became the governor of California. They said he wasn't smart enough, strong enough, or talented enough. He proved them all wrong. Now it's your turn. What's your excuse? If you've been here before, drop a hashtag Believe in the comments below so I can feature you here in a future video. And if you're new, welcome to Believe Nation, the only channel that helps you believe in yourself daily, one video at a time. Believe. It's past midnight. On an Austrian army base in 1965, an 18-year-old recruit climbs out of a barracks window, heart pounding in his chest. He sneaks past sleeping guards and scales a tall fence in the darkness, scraping his hands as he pulls himself over. He knows if he's caught, he'll be thrown in a military jail, but he's willing to risk everything for a crazy dream. That young soldier's name, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And this wild midnight escape is only the beginning of one of the most incredible journeys of our time. How does a poor farm boy from a tiny village in Austria end up a bodybuilding champion, a Hollywood icon, and the governor of California? Let's find out. Early life in Austria. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in 1947 in the tiny village of Thal in Austria. His family was very poor. He later recalled, "I had no money, we had no TV, we had no refrigerator, we had nothing as kids, but I was rich because I had a dream." From a young age, Arnold dreamed big. He wanted to become the greatest bodybuilder in the world and even to use bodybuilding as a ticket to Hollywood one day. This was an outrageous dream for a boy in rural post-war Austria. He lived in a house with no plumbing, an older brother who got all the praise, and a strict father who didn't understand him. Arnold's father, Gustav, was a police chief and a former soldier. He was tough as nails, an alcoholic who demanded discipline. He clearly favored Arnold's older brother, Meinhard, over little Arnold. At home, Arnold felt invisible and undervalued. His father often belittled him and even beat him when he stepped out of line. And when Arnold mentioned his crazy dream of becoming a bodybuilding champion, his father laughed at him. So imagine being a teenager and having your own dad call your dream stupid. That was Arnold's reality. It was a very uptight feeling at home, he later said. He couldn't relax under his father's roof. In fact, years later, Arnold was so scarred by this that he refused to even attend his father's funeral. But if anything, his father's harshness only fueled Arnold's fire. He decided early on he would prove his worth to the world even if his father didn't believe in him. And this hungry ambition became Arnold's escape. He said, "For me, life is continuously being hungry. The meaning of life is not simply to exist, but to move ahead, to go up, to achieve, to conquer." Arnold was hungry to achieve something big, something that would take him far beyond the confines of his little village. Discovering bodybuilding. At 15 years old, Arnold's life changed in an instant. One day, his soccer coach took the team to a local gym for a little weightlifting, just to help the boys stay fit. Arnold walked into that gym and his mouth dropped open. He was mesmerized. Huge men with sculpted muscles were lifting heavy iron plates, waging war with the steel weights, as he described. In that moment, something clicked inside him. There it was before me, my life, the answer I'd been seeking, as if I'd finally stepped onto solid ground. Arnold wrote of that first day in the gym. He knew he had found his calling. From that day on, Arnold threw himself into weightlifting with a passion like nothing he'd felt before. He discovered he had an almost superhuman ability to pack on muscle. He trained harder than everyone. If the gym was closed, he would literally break in, once smashing a window on a Sunday just to get his workout in. While other kids were relaxing or going to parties, Arnold was grinding, doing endless squats, bench presses, and curls in pursuit of his dream physique. His new obsession wasn't exactly popular in 1960s Austria. Bodybuilding was seen as a freakish fringe activity at the time. When Arnold hung photos of muscle-bound champions on his bedroom wall for inspiration, some of the village folk whispered that something was wrong with him. Even his parents were so alarmed that they called a psychiatrist to cure Arnold of his strange new passion. The doctor told them not to worry. He claimed it was just a phase Arnold would grow out of. But Arnold wasn't going to grow out of it. In fact, he was just getting started. Arnold had tasted his purpose, and nothing would stop him now. By 17, he boldly declared that bodybuilding was going to be his vehicle to worldwide fame. He devoured muscle magazines and idolized bodybuilding heroes who would become movie stars like Steve Reeves and Reg Park, the Hercules of the big screen. They had done exactly what Arnold dreamed of doing: build a champion's body and parlay it into Hollywood fame. Arnold told himself he would do the same, only bigger and better than anyone before him. This was ambition on overdrive for a teenager in a tiny town, but Arnold's mind was set. Also, if you want to take real action after this video, I made a free worksheet just for you. It covers the top lessons from today, gives you space to write your biggest takeaways, and helps you build a simple action plan. It's 100% free. Just click the link in the description to go grab it. I'll see you there. Fighting to become a champion. In 1965, at 18, Arnold had to serve a year in the Austrian army. It was mandatory. But not even the army could derail his dream. That year, he learned about the Junior Mr. Europe bodybuilding contest scheduled in Germany. It was his first chance to compete internationally. The only problem? He was stuck on base in basic training and no soldiers were allowed to leave. So Arnold hatched a daring plan. He decided to go AWOL, absent without leave, to enter the contest. That night, Arnold snuck off the base, the scene that I described earlier in this video. So picture young Arnold crawling under barbed wire and jumping onto a train with nothing but a gym bag. He had almost no money, not even proper posing trunks for the competition. He was literally gambling his freedom for this dream. A day later in Stuttgart, Germany, the AWOL soldier stepped on stage barefoot in borrowed posing trunks under the bright lights of the Junior Mr. Europe contest. He flexed his muscles that he had punished in the gym day after day, and the judges' jaws dropped. That night, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the runaway soldier, won first place. He was crowned Junior Mr. Europe. It was his first taste of real victory. But triumph came with a price. When Arnold returned to his base, army officers threw him in military jail for 7 days as punishment for desertion. They gave him nothing but a blanket on a cold stone bench and meager food. Was it worth it? To Arnold, absolutely. In fact, news of his victory spread, and soon the army brass were so impressed that they pardoned him. His commanding officer even held Arnold up as an example to other troops, saying, "Look at what Schwarzenegger did just to win this title." Arnold's insane risk had paid off. And that win lit an even bigger fire in Arnold's belly. After the army, he returned to civilian life with one mission: become the best built man on the planet. He moved to Munich, got a job in a gym, and trained harder than ever, twice a day, like a man possessed. In 1966, he entered the Mr. Europe adult competition and won that too. Now people in the bodybuilding world were whispering about this Austrian monster with 20-inch biceps who seemed unstoppable. Next, Arnold set his sights on the biggest prize of all: Mr. Universe. In his first Mr. Universe contest in London, he arrived as the young hotshot everyone was curious about. Arnold was confident, maybe too confident. On stage, he hit his poses, showing off those massive arms. But when the scores came, Arnold got second place. An American competitor with a more polished physique beat him. Arnold felt crushed. This was his first major defeat. He could have given up or made excuses. Instead, he ate that humble pie and let it motivate him to work even harder. He stayed in London, trained relentlessly for another year, and came back in 1967 with new determination. Sure enough, at just 20 years old, Arnold Schwarzenegger became the youngest Mr. Universe champion in history. He achieved the first step of his dream, but he was nowhere near done. Arnold won the Mr. Universe title again the next year in 1968, solidifying his dominance. By now, he had attracted the attention of Joe Weider, the famous bodybuilding promoter who ran the Mr. Olympia contest. Weider saw star potential in Arnold and invited him to compete in America. This was Arnold's golden ticket to the land of his dreams. That year at age 21, Arnold packed up and moved to America. He arrived in Los Angeles in 1968 with a duffel bag, $20 in his pocket, and almost no English. So just imagine a young immigrant who could barely speak the language in a strange country all alone, carrying nothing but muscles and a dream. It was scary, but Arnold was ecstatic. He was finally in the USA, the place he had fantasized about for years. Settling in Venice Beach, California, Arnold trained at the now legendary Gold's Gym alongside America's top bodybuilders. They quickly realized that this big Austrian had something special, an unparalleled work ethic and unstoppable confidence. In 1970, at just 23, Arnold did the unthinkable. He swept the 3 biggest titles in bodybuilding in the same year, winning Mr. Universe, Mr. World, and Mr. Olympia. He was now the undisputed king of the sport. In the years that followed, he won the prestigious Mr. Olympia contest a total of 7 times, a record at the time. Arnold had conquered the bodybuilding world with sheer ambition and hard work, just like he promised himself that he would. But remember, his dream didn't end with muscles. Even as he was lifting trophies, Arnold was already plotting his next giant leap into movies. He had used bodybuilding to get to America. Now he wanted to use it to storm Hollywood. And that would prove to be the toughest challenge yet. Hollywood dreams and rejection. In 1970, Arnold got his first shot at the movies. A low-budget production company needed a muscle man to play Hercules in a silly adventure film. Joe Weider put Arnold's name forward, hyping him up as an experienced Shakespearean actor from Europe. Just a little white lie to get his foot in the door. They cast Arnold and he was thrilled. This was literally part of his childhood dream now coming true. The movie Hercules in New York turned out to be pretty terrible. Arnold's thick Austrian accent was so hard to understand that the filmmakers dubbed over his voice in post-production. And his last name, Schwarzenegger, was deemed too long and strange for the credits, so they billed him as Arnold Strong. The film flopped and almost no one saw it, but Arnold didn't care. He got paid $10,000, which he promptly invested in real estate in California, his first savvy business move in America. More importantly, he learned his first lessons about Hollywood. When Arnold started knocking on Hollywood's doors for more roles, he faced a wave of rejection. Agents and casting directors took one look at this giant muscle man with the unpronounceable name and heavy accent, and they laughed. They told him, "Look, kid, you'll never be a leading actor." Arnold was bluntly told he had 3 problems. His body was too bulky and weird for movies, his accent was too thick for American audiences, and his name was far too long. Schwarzenegger, what? You should change it, they said. One producer even advised him to lose 30 pounds and learn to speak like John Wayne if he ever wanted a real part. This was a harsh dose of reality. Imagine, by 1970, Arnold was a world champion athlete, but in Hollywood, he was treated like a nobody. Now, most people, they would have given up right there, but not Arnold. He remembered all the times people had called his dreams crazy. His father, that psychiatrist, all the naysayers back home. Each time, Arnold had proved them wrong with his hard work and results. He was not about to quit now. In fact, hearing no from Hollywood just made him angry and even more motivated. Back in Austria, they said I could never be a champion, and I became one, he told himself. Now they're saying I can't be a movie star? I'll just have to work harder and make it happen. So Arnold tackled Hollywood like he tackled the gym, with relentless training. He knew he needed to improve his acting and speech, so he started taking acting classes in 1974 and even hired an accent reduction coach. Night after night, he practiced English tongue twisters, 3,000 thistles thrice thrust thoroughly, trying to soften that Germanic Z into thee. He worked on his acting, his speaking, everything. And the irony is, no matter how hard he tried, Arnold never fully lost his accent. And later, that signature accent became one of the things audiences loved about him. As he said decades later, all the stuff that the Hollywood producers said was an obstacle became an asset. His uniqueness was actually his strength. But it took a few years of struggle. Throughout the early 1970s, roles were sparse. Arnold even missed out on playing the Incredible Hulk on TV because his producers thought his frame was too massive. They gave it to Lou Ferrigno, a bodybuilder actually smaller than Arnold. But Arnold kept pushing. In 1976, he finally caught a break with a supporting role in the film Stay Hungry, playing, what else? A bodybuilder. It wasn't a huge movie, but Arnold poured his heart into it, and it paid off. He won a Golden Globe Award for Best Newcomer for that performance. It was a sign, however small, that Hollywood was starting to take him seriously. Then in 1977, a documentary called Pumping Iron came out, which followed Arnold's quest to win his 6th Mr. Olympia title. In Pumping Iron, audiences saw Arnold's charisma and cheeky confidence on full display. He joked around, he trash-talked his competitors with a smile, and then he dominated on stage. The film became a cult hit and made Arnold somewhat of a pop culture figure. Suddenly, people who'd never set foot in a gym knew the name Schwarzenegger. He was building a fan base. Still, Arnold craved that breakthrough role, the kind of role that would make him a true movie star. It came in 1982. After years of being shrugged off, Arnold was cast as the lead in Conan the Barbarian, a fantasy action film. The director, John Milius, took a chance on him, and Arnold was determined to reward that faith. He spent months training for the role, not just pumping iron, but learning sword fighting, doing stunts, and yes, further improving his speech. When Conan the Barbarian hit theaters, it was a smash hit, grossing over $100 million and thrusting Arnold into the spotlight. Audiences loved his physicality and screen presence. Arnold's huge muscles and even his accent made this ancient warrior feel real and formidable. With Conan and its sequel, Conan the Destroyer, Arnold's name was now synonymous with action hero. Then in 1984 came the role that would cement Arnold as a legend, the Terminator. James Cameron, a young director, cast Arnold as a near-silent cyborg assassin from the future. And in a funny twist of fate, the very things Hollywood initially mocked Arnold for, his imposing physique, his icy accent, made him the perfect Terminator. As the killer robot T-800, Arnold didn't have to say much beyond the now famous "I'll be back" line. His look and presence did the talking. The Terminator became a worldwide phenomenon, and Arnold's performance was iconic. Suddenly, that impossible last name, Schwarzenegger, was on posters everywhere, and everyone learned to pronounce it. Arnold had done it. The former no-chance immigrant had become a Hollywood superstar. He had muscled his way into the exclusive club of top-billing actors through sheer willpower. Through the late 1980s, Arnold dominated action cinema, hit after hit: Commando, Predator, The Running Man, Total Recall, and the blockbuster sequel Terminator 2, Judgment Day. By the early 1990s, he was one of the highest-paid actors in the world. He even showed his range by venturing into comedy, a move nobody expected from the Muscle Man. When he starred opposite Danny DeVito in Twins in 1988, people were skeptical. Could Arnold be funny on purpose? The answer was yes. Audiences loved seeing him poke fun at himself, and Twins was a huge hit. Arnold proved he wasn't afraid to take risks and reinvent himself again, silencing the critics. He followed up with another comedy, Kindergarten Cop, in 1990, which was also successful. A big part of why these films worked was Arnold's willingness to laugh at himself. He didn't mind being silly or vulnerable on screen. He enjoyed it, and fans found it endearing. By this time, Arnold Schwarzenegger seemed unstoppable. He had achieved not one, but two towering dreams of his. He became the greatest in the world at his first passion, bodybuilding, and conquered a second field, movies, where everyone said he would fail. Setbacks, triumphs, and never giving up. But every great journey has its setbacks, and Arnold's story is no exception. In 1993, after a decade of successes, Arnold faced a major box office flop. The big-budget movie Last Action Hero, which many expected to be a surefire hit, bombed with audiences and critics. For the first time in years, an Arnold Schwarzenegger film was labeled a failure. The media pounced, saying that Arnold's golden touch was over and his star power was fading. Imagine hearing that after all he'd accomplished. Arnold, it's over. It was a gut punch for Arnold. He had poured his heart into that film, and now he was publicly humiliated with Razzie Award nominations and nasty reviews. Many action stars might have slowly faded away after a blow like that, but if we learned anything about Arnold, is that he doesn't give up when things get hard. He treats failure as extra motivation, just like the defeats and rejections earlier in his life. So what did Arnold do? He picked himself up, he dusted off the tabloids, calling him a has-been, and he got back to work. He knew he had to come back with something big. So in 1994, he teamed up again with James Cameron to make True Lies, an action comedy spy film. And Arnold was back on top. True Lies was a smash hit, reminding everyone that Schwarzenegger was still a box office king. The lesson here is never count Arnold out. He literally said, "I'll be back." And he meant it on screen and in life. And that resilience, the ability to rebound from setbacks, became as much a part of Arnold's legend as his one-liners. But in the late 1990s, Arnold had little left to prove in entertainment. He was a living legend now. He had fame, he had fortune, he had worldwide respect. He'd become a U.S. citizen now and was living the life that he dreamed of. Most people at this point, they might rest, maybe retire to some beach with their millions of dollars. But Arnold, no. He was looking for the next mountain to climb. He often said, stay hungry, and he lived it. So in the back of his mind, a new ambition was growing. Arnold wanted to make a difference beyond just entertainment. The country that had given him so much opportunity, the United States, was facing challenges, and Arnold felt a call to serve. People around him, they were surprised when whispers started that Arnold might go into politics. Politics? What's a Hollywood action hero doing thinking about government? But those who knew Arnold's life, they understood. He had conquered every challenge he set his sights on, and he loved America deeply. It wasn't so far-fetched that he'd want to give back and lead. Rising to governor. In 2003, California was in turmoil with a special recall election for governor. Arnold saw an opportunity to take on a new kind of challenge. So in true dramatic fashion, he announced on the Jay Leno show that he would run for governor of California, shocking the political world. The moment he announced, it sounded like a Hollywood plot, right? A muscle man movie star running to govern the biggest state in the United States. Many people laughed, dismissing it as a publicity stunt or some vanity project. But Californians were unhappy with the status quo, and Arnold offered a more optimistic can-do message. He hit the campaign trail with the same energy and charisma that he showed on screen. Now, it wasn't easy. The press dug into his past, and opponents threw all kinds of attacks at him, trying to paint him as just a dumb actor or smear him with scandals. It was like the Hollywood rejection days all over again. People saying, you don't belong here. You can't do this. Once again, Arnold faced doubters and hecklers. So how did he respond? With confidence and humor. In one incident, a protester even threw an egg that splattered on Arnold's suit at a rally. Arnold barely flinched. He took off his coat and said back, "This guy owes me bacon now," making the crowd erupt in laughter. He turned potential humiliation into a memorable moment of charm. His ability to connect with people, to be authentic, to be funny and tough all at the same time, it won over a ton of voters. And on election night, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the kid who grew up without a fridge or TV, the immigrant with the funny name and accent, he was elected governor of California. It still sounds a bit unbelievable when you think about it. The margin was decisive, and Arnold showed he was not just a novelty candidate, he was there to lead. When he was sworn in as the 38th governor on November 17, 2003, standing next to his wife, Maria Shriver, even he had to marvel at the journey. In a speech shortly after, Arnold spoke from his heart about what this moment meant. "My fellow Americans, this is an amazing moment for me," he said. "To think that a once scrawny boy from Austria could grow up to become governor of California, that is an immigrant's dream. It is the American dream." He had achieved the unimaginable. Arnold served as governor for 2 terms from 2003 until 2011. And true to form, he attacked the job with enthusiasm and worked tirelessly, just as he did in every other phase of his life. But for our story, the exact politics don't matter as much as the symbolism of his victory. Arnold had proven something profound. No dream is too big. He rose from poverty and obscurity to reach one of the highest offices in the land. It's a journey that actually reads like a movie script, except it really happened. The power of ambition and hard work. Arnold Schwarzenegger's life story is the testament to the power of ambition, of hard work, and just refusing to give up. He taught us that it doesn't matter where you come from or how many people tell you no. What matters is how badly you want it and how hard you're willing to work. Think about it. A skinny kid from rural Austria, living with no heat or running water, dared to dream of standing on top of the world. When people mocked him, he trained harder. When life knocked him down, he got back up. He ignored the naysayers and even used their doubt as motivation to push him even further. And every time Arnold hit a wall, he found the way through it. Or he just smashed right through in true Schwarzenegger style. Arnold's journey took him from farm chores and strict discipline to pumping iron in a dusty gym to the glamour of Hollywood and into the halls of political power. And at each stage, there were setbacks and rejections, a father who didn't believe in him, society that misunderstood him, an industry that initially rejected him, and critics who tried to write him off. But Arnold's story shows that if you stay hungry and work like hell, you can overcome anything. His life is living proof of his own mantra: stay hungry, stay driven. He literally conquered every dream he set, and even after reaching the mountaintop, he looked for new challenges to grow further. So, when you find yourself facing doubters or obstacles on the way to your own dreams, think of young Arnold breaking into a gym on a Sunday because nothing was going to stop him from training. Think of Arnold hearing it's impossible and deciding, I'll do it anyway. Use that as inspiration to keep you going. Embrace the rejections, let them motivate you, and never stop moving forward. And congratulations, you're one video closer to who you're meant to be. Believe. Now let's watch the incredible story of Jim Carrey. What would you do if you were homeless at 12, scrubbing toilets at 15, and rejected by everyone? Jim Carrey lived it, but he never stopped believing. Jim grew up in Canada in a hardworking family, but when his dad lost his job, everything fell apart. They lost their home and were forced to live in a van. At 15, Jim dropped out of school to help. He worked as a janitor, scrubbing toilets, mopping floors, anything to keep his family afloat. But while he was cleaning, he was dreaming. He knew he was meant for comedy. He practiced jokes in the mirror, did impressions, and finally got on stage. But his first stand-up gig, a disaster. No one laughed. He bombed. Hollywood rejected him. They said he was too weird, too over the top, too much. But Jim refused to quit. He kept grinding, kept pushing, and finally got his break on In Living Color. Then came Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and overnight he became the biggest comedy star in the world. And here's the craziest part. Before making it, Jim wrote himself a $10 million check for acting services rendered and dated it 1995. In 1995, he got paid exactly $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey was homeless, broke, and laughed off stage, but he never stopped believing. So what about you? Early life, laughter, and struggle. Jim Carrey was born in 1962 in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada, into a humble, hardworking family. Even as a child, Jim loved making people laugh. At age 8, he would practice making funny faces in the mirror, and by 10, he was so confident in his impersonations that he mailed a letter to Carol Burnett, hoping to be on her comedy show. Comedy was his passion from the start, but Jim's childhood wasn't all smiles and jokes. His family hit serious hardships in his early teens. When Jim was around 12 to 14 years old, his father, Percy, lost his job as an accountant. The sudden blow plunged the family into financial crisis. They even became homeless for a while, living out of a Volkswagen van because they couldn't afford a home. The van was so cramped that Jim and his brother had to sleep in a tent outside. To keep the family afloat, everyone had to pitch in. Jim took on a job as a janitor alongside his dad, cleaning floors and toilets at a factory after school. By the time he was 15, money was so tight that Jim quit school to work full-time and help his family make ends meet. He later said that if show business hadn't worked out, he might have ended up working at a steel mill in Ontario. That's how limited his options seemed back then. It was a tough, uncertain life for a teenager, mopping floors by night and dreaming of comedy stardom by day. Despite the overwhelming challenges, Jim never let go of his love for comedy. In whatever free time he could scrape together, he honed his act. He would stand in front of a mirror practicing goofy expressions and voice impressions, determined to turn his natural silliness into a ticket out of his hardship. His father, despite his own struggles, believed in Jim's talent and did what he could to support his son's dream. Percy Carrey would even drive Jim to downtown Toronto to perform at comedy clubs, giving his son a shot on stage when Jim was just a teenager. The family situation was pretty dire, but those small moments on stage provided a spark of hope for young Jim. He knew making people laugh was what he was meant to do. All he needed was a chance and the courage to keep trying even when things went wrong. Chasing the comedy dream. Jim Carrey's first attempt at stand-up comedy didn't exactly go as planned. In 1977, 15-year-old Jim got up on stage at a Toronto comedy club for the very first time and bombed spectacularly. He had crafted an act full of standard celebrity impressions, the kind he had practiced at home, but the edgy club audience wasn't impressed. His debut was met with silence and awkward coughs rather than laughter. The experience devastated him. My impersonations bombed, which gave me doubts about this career path, Jim later recalled. For a moment, the teen who had so boldly dreamed of comedy stardom was shaken to his core. Was he really cut out for this? And for a while after the first show, Jim stepped back to regroup. He focused on polishing his material and waited for his family's situation to improve a bit. Eventually, things stabilized. His father found a modest job and the Carreys moved out of the van and into a house. With a roof over their head again, Jim was able to return to the stage. In 1979, at age 17, he mounted a comeback in the Toronto comedy scene. This time, he had a sharper act and a fearless attitude, and it paid off. He started to get some laughs, and soon Jim booked his first paid gig, a 20-minute spot at a local club for a small $20 fee. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Audiences were beginning to see the spark in the tall, rubber-faced kid from Ontario. Jim's confidence grew with each performance, and so did his reputation. By the early 1980s, he was becoming a well-known young comic in Canada, earning opening slots for more established comedians. One of those established stars took notice in a big way. Legendary comic Rodney Dangerfield saw Jim's act and was impressed by the lanky youngster's manic energy and impressions. In 1981, Dangerfield invited Jim Carrey to tour with him as an opening act. Imagine being 19 years old and hitting the road with one of the most famous comedians in the country. It was an incredible opportunity. Jim eagerly joined the tour, gaining exposure to American audiences for the first time. With Dangerfield's boost, he even got a foot in the door in Hollywood. He moved to Los Angeles in 1983 to try to break into the US show business. However, Hollywood wasn't ready to roll out the red carpet just yet. Jim faced rejection after rejection in those early LA years. He auditioned for NBC's Saturday Night Live, not once, not twice, but 3 times, and was turned down each time. One of those failed auditions was particularly bitter. Jim never even got to perform for Saturday Night Live's producer Lorne Michaels because some staff writers decided in advance that Michaels wouldn't like Carrey's wild style. He landed a starring role in a low-budget comedy film called Once Bitten in 1985 and a short-lived NBC sitcom The Duck Factory in 1984. But true breakout success still eluded him. Casting agents and executives didn't know what to make of Jim Carrey. Some thought his rubber-faced, over-the-top slapstick was just too weird for movies or TV. At times, Jim must have felt like he was too much for Hollywood to handle. The big opportunities that he dreamed of were just out of reach, and the string of rejections could have easily broken his spirit. Yet through all of these setbacks, Jim refused to quit. He kept grinding, kept pushing his act, and kept showing up at comedy clubs night after night to refine his skills. He was a fixture at LA's Comedy Store and the improv circuit, determined to make his mark. Each no he heard only gave him more incentive to try harder. In his mind, he hadn't come this far, from cleaning factories in Ontario to almost getting on national TV, just to give up. Jim believed it was only a matter of time before his big break would come. And he was right. In the late 1980s, his persistence finally paid off in a big way, opening the door to the opportunity that would change his life. Breakthrough on In Living Color. Jim Carrey's first major breakthrough arrived on a TV sketch comedy series, but not the one he originally envisioned. Instead of Saturday Night Live, it was Fox's In Living Color that would catapult Jim to fame. In 1990, Carrey was cast as a regular on this edgy sketch show created by Keenen Ivory Wayans. He was the lone white comedian in a predominantly black cast, and his fearless, zany characters fit right into the show's bold style. Week after week, audiences laughed at Jim's scene-stealing sketches like the accident-prone Fire Marshal Bill with his twisted rubbery face, or the outrageously feminine bodybuilder Vera DeMilo. Finally, after years of struggling, Jim Carrey had found a platform that let his oddball talent shine. He spent 5 seasons on In Living Color from 1990 to 1994, becoming one of the show's breakout stars. Hollywood, it turned out, was ready for Jim Carrey after all. They just needed to see him in the right setting. Thanks to In Living Color, Carrey's name was starting to get noticed, but nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. In 1994, Jim leapt from TV fame to global superstardom in the blink of an eye. It all happened in one unbelievable year. In early 1994, he headlined a quirky detective comedy called Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. The film was low budget and the studio didn't have high expectations, but Jim's hilarious performance as the wacky pet detective caught lightning in a bottle. Ace Ventura became a surprise hit, and Jim's catchphrases, "already then," were suddenly everywhere. But he was just getting started. That summer, Jim co-starred in The Mask, a comic book fantasy where his character transforms into a manic, green-faced trickster. It was another box office smash, cementing Carrey's reputation for unmatched cartoonish energy. Then, as if two hit movies weren't enough, December 1994 saw the release of Dumb and Dumber, a buddy comedy pairing Carrey with Jeff Daniels. The film was yet another blockbuster, and Jim's portrayal of the sweet but dim-witted Lloyd Christmas had audiences laughing worldwide. 3 major movies in 1 year, each a box office success, turned Jim Carrey into the biggest comedy star on the planet. Virtually overnight, he went from a guy who couldn't get on Saturday Night Live to becoming a household name. Hollywood's attitude towards Jim Carrey flipped almost comically. The same too over-the-top comedian they had been hesitant to cast was now their most bankable funny man. In fact, after Ace Ventura and The Mask raked in cash, studios were desperate to secure Carrey's talents. In 1995, he negotiated a then unprecedented deal, Jim Carrey became the first comic actor to ever earn a $20 million salary for a single film with the dark comedy The Cable Guy. He had ascended to the very top of Hollywood's A-list in record time. But amongst all this whirlwind of success, something truly magical, almost unbelievable, was happening in Jim's life, something he had dreamed about years before. It's a story so crazy you'd think it was a Hollywood script, and it involved a simple piece of paper Jim kept in his wallet. The $10 million check, dreams into reality. One of the most legendary stories about Jim Carrey is a testament to the power of visualization and self-belief. Back in the 1980s, when Jim was still a struggling unknown in Los Angeles, he did something audacious. He wrote himself a check for $10 million. In 1985, a broken, hopeful Jim Carrey made out a personal check payable to himself for acting services rendered, post dated exactly 10 years into the future. The memo line simply read, "For acting, payment for work he vowed to someday accomplish." He tucked that check into his wallet and carried it with him everywhere. At the time, $10 million might as well have been $1 billion to Jim. He was barely scraping by. But that check was his symbolic promise to himself that one day, somehow, he would be worth that much as an actor. It was a bold act of faith. Now, for years, the check just stayed in Jim's wallet, growing tattered as the date drew nearer. And then, incredibly, reality caught up with Jim's imagination. Just before Thanksgiving 1995, exactly as Jim had envisioned, he got news of a career-making payday. He learned that he was going to earn $10 million for starring in Dumb and Dumber. The dream written on that check had come true almost to the letter. Jim had gone from sleeping in a tent and scrubbing toilets to pulling down 8-figure paychecks doing what he loved. It was a stunning example of what unwavering belief and determination can achieve. Almost like the universe decided to wink at him and say, "You believed, and you did it." Jim never forgot the significance of that moment, especially the role his family played in his journey. When his father, Percy, passed away in 1994, Jim placed the now weathered $10 million check in his father's casket. It was a way of honoring the man who had always believed in him and shared his dream. "I put that check in the casket with my father because it was our dream together," Jim said. The story of the $10 million check has since become a Hollywood legend. It's a powerful reminder to dream big and believe in yourself even when circumstances look impossible. Jim Carrey's life is proof that sometimes the wildest dreams really do come true. Beyond laughter, reinvention, and reflection. By the late 1990s, Jim Carrey was at the absolute peak of comedic fame, but he wasn't content to stay in one box. He had conquered comedy. Now he wanted to prove he could truly act. So Jim took a sharp turn and started pursuing more serious dramatic roles. And once again, he found success against the odds. In 1998, he stunned critics and audiences with The Truman Show, playing a sincere insurance salesman who discovers his entire life is a scripted TV show. Carrey's performance was heartfelt and restrained, and it earned him a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor. The very next year, he transformed himself to play Andy Kaufman in Man on the Moon in 1999, another role that earned him critical acclaim and a Golden Globe. Suddenly, Jim Carrey wasn't just a goofy comedian, he was a respected actor capable of depth and nuance. He continued to mix it up in the 2000s, starring in films ranging from broad comedies from Bruce Almighty, Yes Man, to artful dramas like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in 2004, for which he received BAFTA and Golden Globe nominations. Time and again, Jim showed that he could defy expectations, reinventing himself and silencing the naysayers who once doubted his range. Yet, even as his career soared, Jim faced personal trials behind the scenes. The early fame came at a cost to his personal life. He went through 2 short-lived marriages in the 1990s and a series of very high-profile relationships that didn't work out. More profoundly, Jim battled periods of intense depression for many years. He's spoken openly about the fact that making millions of people laugh couldn't shield him from struggles with mental health and identity. After his explosive rise up, Jim had to grapple with the question, who am I, really, when I'm not Jim Carrey, the comedy star? In a candid moment, he admitted that Jim Carrey had become a character he was playing, a persona he felt people expected, which left him feeling empty. The realization pushed him to seek a deeper sense of self beyond the spotlight. Tragedy also struck Jim's life in a deeply personal way. His mother, who had been ill, passed away in 1991, just as Jim's career was taking off, and his father, his biggest supporter, died in 1994, right before Dumb and Dumber made Jim a $10 million man. Losing both parents so early was a heavy blow for Jim. In the years that followed, he also endured a very public tragedy when a former girlfriend died by suicide in 2015, leading to painful controversy and lawsuits, which were eventually dismissed. Through these hardships, Carrey gradually turned to spirituality and art as a way to heal and find meaning. He developed a passion for painting and sculpting and spending long hours in his art studio creating vivid, expressive works that surprised those who knew only his on-screen persona. In interviews and appearances, Jim's public demeanor began to change as well. He often spoke about deeper philosophical concepts, the illusion of fame, and the importance of the present moment. Some people found his behavior strange, but Jim explained that he was simply no longer interested in playing the Hollywood game or being who others expected him to be. After decades in the limelight, he sought authenticity and inner peace above all. In fact, one of Jim Carrey's most powerful public messages came during a 2014 commencement speech he gave to graduating students. He told a story about his father's influence that summed up everything he had learned from his own journey. Jim's father had played it safe. He'd abandoned his dream of becoming a comedian and took a steady job as an accountant to support the family. But that safe path ended abruptly when Percy was let go from his job, leading to the hardships that the Carreys endured afterwards. From this, Jim learned a lesson he never forgot, as he told the students, "I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which is that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you do want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love." In other words, life has no guarantees, so it's better to risk failure at something that truly matters to you. Hearing those words, it's easy to see how Jim's own life exemplifies that philosophy. He risked everything to chase his comedic dream, and though the road was rough, in the end, he achieved more than he ever imagined. Legacy of an unstoppable believer. Jim Carrey's journey from a homeless teen to Hollywood megastar is more than just a rags to riches tale. It shows resilience and authenticity and the power of belief. At every low point in his life, from living in a tent to bombing on stage, Jim found a way to keep his dream alive. He had an almost stubborn faith in his own destiny, scribbling down his wild ambitions on paper like that $10 million check and carrying them close to his heart. When others told him he was too strange, too over the top, or just too much, he didn't tone himself down to fit in. He turned himself up, refining his craft until the world caught up with his vision. And once the world did catch up, Jim still wasn't afraid to change and grow beyond the box he put himself in. He's given us countless laughs with his elastic face and physical comedy, but he's also moved us with performances of real emotional depth. Through successes and failures, he remained at his core that determined kid who just knew he was meant to make people laugh. Today, Jim Carrey has stepped back from making movies at the breakneck pace of his 1990s heyday. After decades of entertaining us, he's hinted at the possible retirement from acting and has become selective about new roles. He focuses much of his time on painting and writing and speaking about the insights he's gained in life. But his impact on pop culture and comedy is already immortal. A whole generation grew up idolizing his characters, from Ace Ventura's talking butt jokes to the mass wild dance numbers, and many of today's comedians cite Jim as a major inspiration. His commitment to his characters and his improvisational genius redefined big screen comedy in the 1990s. And beyond the laughs, Jim Carrey, the man, has inspired millions with his personal story of perseverance. So, what can we take away from Jim Carrey's incredible journey? First, never underestimate the power of belief and hard work. Jim literally envisioned his success years before it happened, but he didn't stop at wishful thinking. He put in the work day after day, whether anyone was watching or not. Second, embrace what makes you unique. The very traits that people mocked or rejected in Jim, his wild energy, his expressive style, became the foundation of his superstar success. He stayed true to himself and it paid off. And finally, remember that fame and fortune aren't the ultimate keys to happiness. Jim's later years taught him, and by extension teach all of us, that personal fulfillment comes from being true to yourself and doing what you love, not from chasing others' approval. As he wisely said, you can fail at doing what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on what brings you joy. Jim Carrey was once a 12-year-old living in a van, a 15-year-old janitor scrubbing toilets, and a young comic who heard more no's than yeses. But he never stopped believing in his dream. Instead of giving up, he used every setback to push harder. That belief carried him through the darkest times and ultimately into the brightest spotlight. If Jim's story tells us anything, it's that no dream is too big, not when you're willing to work for it and believe in it with all your heart. So ask yourself, what dreams do you have, and are you willing to take a chance on them? Jim Carrey did, and he not only changed his own life, he brought laughter and inspiration to the whole world. And that might be the greatest success of all. So whatever your passion is, keep going and keep believing. Jim Carrey's incredible journey is living proof that sometimes life can go beyond your wildest dreams. After all, as Jim would say with that famous grin, Alrighty then, go make it happen. Now let's watch the incredible story of Tony Robbins. Imagine growing up never knowing if there'd be food on the table. That was Tony Robbins' reality. He was born in 1960 and raised in a chaotic and abusive household. Tony was the oldest of three, often acting as a protector for his younger siblings. His mother, who he loved dearly, had a volatile temper and struggled with substance abuse. She married and divorced multiple times, which meant Tony had 4 different fathers come and go. There was constant instability. One day there might be dinner, the next day nothing. Often Tony was hungry, scared, and never certain what tomorrow would bring. One of Tony's lowest moments came as a teenager. The abuse at home escalated to the point where, at 17 years old, Tony's mother chased him out of the house with a knife. Think about that, a parent threatening your life. Tony knew he had to escape, so he left home and never returned, determined to find a better path. Overnight, he went from a turbulent home to no home at all. He had no college education, no money, and no support system waiting for him. To survive, Tony took a job as a janitor, earning about $40 a week. He also worked evenings, moving people's belongings for extra cash. It was backbreaking work, but he did it with one thing in mind. This was not going to be how his story was to end. You think your early life is hard? Consider Tony's. By 17, he was essentially on his own, scrubbing floors at night just to eat. Yet in that hardship, Tony found an inner hunger. He describes that adversity by saying, "If my mom had been the mother I thought I wanted, I wouldn't be as driven. I wouldn't be as hungry. I probably wouldn't have cared about other people suffering as much as I do." In other words, the very pain that could have broken him fueled his drive instead. Psychology research actually backs this up. Individuals who face childhood trauma can develop remarkable resilience and creativity as coping mechanisms. One study found that people who experienced adversity in youth were more likely to become entrepreneurs, often because they learned to adapt and fight for a better life. Tony is living proof. His tough childhood lit a fire in him, a hunger to change his circumstances and to ensure no one around him would suffer the way he did. But Tony's early years weren't only filled with pain. There was one beautiful moment that planted a seed of purpose in his heart. One Thanksgiving, when Tony was 11 years old, his family was so broke they couldn't afford a meal. They expected a dinner of canned vegetables. Pretty depressing for the holiday. Then the doorbell rang. Young Tony opened it and saw a stranger standing there with bags of groceries. It was a complete surprise. They hadn't asked anyone for help. Tony yelled for his dad, ecstatic that they've got food. But Tony's father reacted with anger and pride, initially refusing the charity. The stranger gently persisted, saying, "This is a gift from someone who cares. Don't let your family starve because of your pride." Tony's dad finally accepted the groceries, but he left the family shortly after, overwhelmed by shame. For Tony, however, that day was transformational. We had no idea it was coming, and that simple act didn't just fill my plates, it filled my heart with hope. It showed me that strangers care. That single act of kindness lit a spark in Tony. He learned the power of giving. He often says the secret to living is giving, and he lives it. In fact, Tony made a lifelong promise to pay it forward. Through his Basket Brigade and Foundation, he's now delivered millions of meals to families in need on Thanksgiving all over the world. Think about that ripple effect. One stranger's generosity inspired a movement that has helped countless people. Science shows that giving to others doesn't just help the recipient, it boosts the giver's happiness as well. Studies have found that people who spend money on others report greater happiness than those who spend it on themselves. Tony felt that joy at 11 years old, and he built a philosophy around it. So here's a lesson. Your background might be chaotic. You might have every excuse to say success isn't for me. But Tony's early life teaches a critical lesson. You can choose to let adversity fuel you instead of fool you. Instead of using his past as an excuse, Tony used it as a reason to be hungry for change, to care deeply about other people's pain, and to never settle for less than he could be. If he could make that choice amid so much turmoil, you can too. As Tony often reminds us, your past does not equal your future. In fact, sometimes your past becomes the fuel for an even brighter future. Tony's life began to change when he discovered something powerful. The right mentor can compress decades of learning into days. So picture this. 17-year-old Tony is cleaning floors by night and going to high school by day, desperate for a break. One weekend, he's helping a family friend move houses, that side hustle to earn a few extra bucks. Tony can't help but notice that his friend, who his dad used to call a loser, suddenly seems really successful. So Tony, bold kid that he is, straight up asks, "My dad said you used to be such a loser. How come you're so successful now?" If you can imagine, Tony's always had guts. The friend wasn't offended. Instead, he smiled and told Tony about a Jim Rohn seminar he'd attended. He said, "This man takes everything he's learned in 20, 30 years of life and pours it into like 4 hours." For Tony, that idea was electrifying. 4 hours to gain decades of wisdom, he needed to go. But the seminar ticket was around $35 to $40, basically a week's pay for Tony at the time. Think about being 17 and gambling an entire week's wage on a hunch that a seminar might change your life. Would you do it? Tony did. He says it was a big decision to spend all that money, but he went for it. And that choice right there was a turning point. Tony walked into Jim Rohn's seminar and was absolutely mesmerized. Jim Rohn was a renowned personal development speaker, wise, calm, and incredibly insightful. For Tony, it was like someone finally handed him the manual for a better life that he'd been searching for. Jim Rohn's teachings hit Tony like a ton of bricks, in a good way. One lesson in particular lit Tony up from the inside, Rohn said. Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. This was revelation. All Tony's life, he'd been working hard just to survive. But here was the idea that if he improved himself, he could change the world. Tony later reflected, Jim gave me a way of looking at life that allowed me to not ask life to be easier, but to ask that I be better. That mindset shift from blaming circumstances to building yourself was pure gold. Tony realized the secret to life was self-education and personal growth, and that if he developed skills and character, he'd always be able to help others succeed. Tony didn't just take notes at that seminar, he took action. By the end of the event, he had a burning question for Jim Rohn. How can I work for you? Now, Jim Rohn was a big deal. He had plenty of staff, but something about Tony's passion stood out. Jim saw a bit of his younger self in this kid full of drive. He gave Tony a chance to prove himself selling seminar tickets, and boy did Tony prove himself. At just 18 years old, Tony became the top salesman promoting Jim Rohn events. He was on fire, traveling city to city, convincing people to come hear Jim Rohn, basically evangelizing the message that had changed his own life. Then one day, Jim Rohn called young Tony into his office. He said, Tony, I want to expand and I'm going to make you the owner of a branch office. You've earned it. Jim told Tony to choose any city, any team size, the sky's the limit. Tony was stunned. He had a dream of maybe becoming a manager someday, and here was his mentor handing him the keys. Tony, brimming with confidence, said he wanted an office in Beverly Hills with a team of 30 people. Quite an ask for a teenager. Jim essentially replied, great, it's yours. You start immediately. When Tony asked about his salary, Jim dropped another surprise. You write it. You're in your own business now. Jim had set Tony up as an independent distributor, meaning Tony wasn't an employee anymore. He was an entrepreneur running his own show at 18. Talk about empowerment. Tony later said that was one of the greatest gifts Jim ever gave him, the chance to run a business and learn firsthand. He had no role models of entrepreneurs growing up, so Jim became that role model. Suddenly, Tony was running his own small business promoting seminars. He had to hire and motivate a team, manage logistics, and sell to keep that office alive. It was sink or swim, and Tony swam. He worked tirelessly, giving speeches around Los Angeles, filling rooms for Jim Rohn's talks. In those years, Tony not only honed his public speaking and sales skills, but he also learned a priceless lesson about business. The chokehold on the growth of any business is the psychology and skills of the leader, he says. In other words, a business can only grow as much as its leader does. Tony experienced that firsthand. When he doubted himself, sales would slip. When he was motivated and resourceful, sales would surge. So for you as an entrepreneur, this part of Tony's journey shows the incredible value of mentorship and self-education. Tony often cites a quote from his mentor. If you want life to change, you have to change. If you want life to get better, you have to get better. Jim Rohn had condensed decades of wisdom into seminars that Tony soaked up in days, and Tony applied it immediately by working for Jim. This combination of learning and doing was explosive for Tony's growth. He literally went from janitor to running a Beverly Hills office in about a year because he found a mentor and showed up coachable. And Tony's not alone. A lot of successful people have a mentor. In fact, research shows that having a mentor dramatically improves your chances of success in business. One study found that 1/3 of successful entrepreneurs had a mentor or support network, whereas among entrepreneurs who failed, only 14% had mentorship. That's a huge difference. Think about it. 33% versus 14%. Success leaves clues. And one big clue is don't do it alone. Find someone who's achieved what you aspire to and learn from them. Tony's hunger for guidance didn't end with Jim Rohn. He kept seeking out experts to learn from NLP co-founder John Grinder, with whom Tony trained in neuro-linguistic programming in his early days, to modeling the best in every field he encountered. That's how he built his diverse skill set. So ask yourself, who can you learn from? Maybe you can't meet your heroes in person, but when you read their books, watch their talks, watch their YouTube videos, take their courses, Tony spent what little money he had on seminars and books rather than instant pleasures. It paid off massively. The key lesson here is invest in yourself. Tony invested time, money, and effort to improve his mindset and skills. At age 17, when most of his peers were just hanging out, you can do the same at any age. It might mean swallowing your pride and becoming a student again, but it's worth it. As Tony learned from Jim Rohn, work harder on yourself than anything else because your own growth is the engine for your success. Mentors and role models shortcut the learning curve, but you have to step up and do the work. Tony showed up, took notes, volunteered, asked questions. He was an active mentee, not a passive one. And because he was so coachable, mentors opened even more doors for him. So who is your Jim Rohn? And equally important, are you ready to be the kind of mentee that absorbs knowledge like a sponge and acts on it? When you do, you set yourself up for the kind of breakthrough Tony experienced. It's like hitting fast forward on your growth. Tony's trajectory from broke teen to budding businessman happened so fast because he leveraged mentorship and massive action. You can do this. Seek guidance, stay hungry to learn, and then get out there and implement what you learn. As Tony put it, success leaves clues. So find those clues from people who've walked the path and use them to blaze your trail. Equipped with new skills and unshakable drive, Tony Robbins set out to multiply his impact beyond working for someone else. By his early 20s, Tony had a vision of taking what he learned and spreading it to as many people as possible on his own terms. He often says he had no intention of becoming a businessman at first. He was just obsessed with finding solutions to help people improve their lives. But that obsession naturally led him into business ventures. Tony's first big solo success came from combining innovation with massive action. In the 1980s, he decided to share his strategies through a self-help book and audio program. At just 24 years old, Tony wrote Unlimited Power, a book that introduced his ideas on personal achievement. He also distilled his coaching into a 30-day audio program called Personal Power. But here's the kicker. Tony didn't rely on traditional methods to reach people. He went all in on infomercials, a cutting-edge move at the time. Those late-night TV spots where an energetic guy promises to change your life, Tony was that guy. And he was one of the first in the self-help industry to do it so effectively. It was a game changer. Tony's enthusiasm blasted through TV screens into millions of homes. His message that you have the power to change your life resonated widely. People from all walks of life started ordering his tapes and practicing his techniques. Tony's leap to television caused his career to explode. He said that one year in his early 20s, he made about $40,000. And the very next year, after the infomercials hit, he made over $1 million. That's a 25x jump in income in 1 year. He was only about 25 years old and suddenly a self-made millionaire. And according to Tony, from that point on, he never earned less than $1 million a year again. Talk about an inflection point. By 26, Tony Robbins was not just making money, he was becoming famous. His youthful charisma and real results landed him interviews and a growing fan base. In the 1990s, Tony's companies hit over $50 million in annual revenue. And his influence kept expanding. He published Awaken the Giant Within in 1991, which became a classic in the genre, inspiring entrepreneurs and leaders worldwide to adopt empowering beliefs and habits. That book is still on many CEOs' must-read lists. By the early 2000s, Tony's success allowed him to invest and partner in numerous businesses. It's reported by the 2000s his enterprises were bringing in more than $30 million in yearly profits, and he was just getting started. Tony has a natural instinct for business strategy. Even though he says he stumbled into being a business owner, once he got a taste, he became a student of business itself. Over the years, he ended up founding or partnering in dozens of companies. As of today, Tony Robbins is involved in more than 30 companies in industries ranging from education to hospitality to sports to finance, with a combined annual sales of around $5 billion. Yes, billion with a B. Some estimates even put his network of businesses higher. One source notes he's involved with 100 plus companies doing over $7 billion per year. But conservatively, the guy has an empire that most entrepreneurs can only dream of. What's remarkable is how Tony built that empire by practicing what he preaches. He is constantly innovating and looking for ways to add value. As he puts it, the secret sauce in any business is to constantly add more value to your customers than anyone else. Do more for your customers than anyone else would ever expect. This philosophy made his early products stand out. They genuinely help people, creating raving fans, and it drives his companies today. He's been honored by business authorities. Accenture named him one of the top 50 business intellectuals in the world, and Harvard Business Press and American Express have called him one of the top business leaders and strategists. That's not bad for a kid without a college degree. Tony's reach also grew through his live events, those famous high-energy seminars like Unleash the Power Within with the Firewalk and Date with Destiny. He's literally spoken to millions of people in seminars across the globe for over 4 decades. You may have seen the Netflix documentary, I Am Not Your Guru, which gives a peek into how transformational his events can be. People walk in uncertain and walk out with a new lease on life. Tony's events often have thousands in attendance. At one event in Singapore, there were over 6,000 people in the crowd, all jumping, shouting, and making big life decisions together. Tony knows how to command a room, even a stadium, with his presence and energy. At these events, you'll see him bouncing on trampolines, giving bear hugs, intervening with individuals one-on-one, whatever it takes to help someone break through fear or pain. It's truly a spectacle and a deeply moving experience for attendees. He is a master at getting people into a peak state. Thousands attend his events to experience the energy and breakthroughs. Here in Singapore, over 6,000 people were on their feet as Tony took the stage. His ability to engage and uplift a room of this size shows how much impact one person can have when they bring passion and value. As Tony's reputation grew, entrepreneurs and leaders around the world sought out his coaching. He's worked with champions in every realm, athletes like Serena Williams and Wayne Gretzky, entertainers, and of course, business moguls. One famous example is Mark Benioff, the founder of Salesforce. In the 1990s, Benioff was a young, ambitious entrepreneur who attended Tony's seminar. He was so impressed that he asked Tony to mentor him. Tony agreed, and for years he advised Mark Benioff as Mark built Salesforce from a startup into a cloud computing giant. Benioff has often credited Tony's influence in helping him craft his vision and company culture. Tony's also been a coach and friend to Paul Tudor Jones II, one of the most successful hedge fund managers in the world. Tony has mentored him for over 24 years. When someone at the top of their field like Jones or Benioff keeps Tony around for decades, it tells you Tony delivers real value. He's known as the CEO whisperer, a behind-the-scenes advisor helping leaders sharpen their psychology and strategy. By helping the elite perform even better, Tony had a hand in countless innovations and deals that shape industries. At the same time, he's never lost touch with everyday entrepreneurs. His business mastery seminars are tailored to business owners, where he personally teaches what he's learned about scaling companies, marketing, finance, and leadership. He distilled these lessons into what he calls the 7 forces of business mastery, covering everything from creating an effective business map to world-class marketing to constant innovation. Entrepreneurs pay tens of thousands to attend his business programs because a single insight from Tony can transform their revenue or save their company. And often, it's not just technical know-how, it's the way Tony reframes their mindset that unleashes their next level. Tony's own business journey wasn't without challenges, by the way. He's had partnerships that didn't work out, economic downturns that hit his companies hard, even public criticism to navigate. But what makes Tony stand out is that he applies the same resilience to his businesses that he preaches to individuals. He will be the first to tell you that not everything he touched turned to gold immediately. He had to learn, pivot, and sometimes take hits. For example, when the 2008 financial crisis happened, Tony saw many people suffering and realized he himself needed to deepen his financial knowledge to help. That led him to spend years interviewing top investors and ultimately writing Money, Master the Game. In 2014, a book compiling financial wisdom for the average person. He donated all the profits of that book to charity, feeding people, of course, and simultaneously reestablished himself in an entirely new domain, personal finance, with huge success. That's Tony. See a need, immerse in learning, deliver value, repeat. By now, Tony Robbins has achieved a level of success and impact few ever will. But what's truly inspiring is how he did it, through relentless growth, passionate service, and absolute congruence with his teachings. He became a living example of the principles that he shares. It's one thing to give advice. It's another thing to embody it for decades. Tony does the latter. So here are some key takeaways from Tony's rise for you. Innovate and be willing to do things differently, like Tony did with infomercials before it was popular. Deliver massive value. Outwork and outcarry your competition when it comes to serving your customers. And perhaps, most importantly, scale your influence by empowering others. Tony went from one-on-one coaching to one-on-1,000 seminars to one-on millions via TV, books, and YouTube. In your business, think about how you can reach more people and serve at a higher level by leveraging media, technology, or a team. Tony's just one person, but through smart strategy, he's managed to touch the lives of millions of people. If he can go from literally zero to that, Why can't you reach 10x or 100x more people than you currently do? That mindset shift from addition to multiplication is what separates good entrepreneurs from great ones. Finally, take notice that Tony's success always circles back to helping others. He became wildly successful because he obsessed over how to help people get what they want. As the Zig Ziglar quote goes, you will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. Tony is a prime example. Even now, in his 60s, he's constantly traveling, speaking, and contributing. He doesn't need to work another day financially. He chooses to because of his mission. When you build your business around a mission that truly helps people, you build something far more enduring and meaningful. Tony often says business is a spiritual game. It's about the soul you pour into it and the lives you touch. His life's work shows that making money and making a difference are not mutually exclusive. They're synergistic. So as you dream of your next level, ask, how can I serve? How can I solve problems for others in a way no one else is? Approach it with that give first mentality Tony has, and your success will be a byproduct of the genuine impact you create. So up to now, we've seen how Tony Robbins' mindset and strategies fueled his journey from broke to billions. Now let's switch gears and focus on you. What lessons from Tony's life and teachings can you apply to your own entrepreneurial journey right now? Tony's wisdom is vast, but I've distilled 4 core principles that come up again and again in his work, especially relevant to entrepreneurs. These are the mindsets and practices that Tony preaches and lives that can help take your business and life to the next level. Number 1, state is everything. Master your mind and emotions. Tony Robbins is big on this. Manage your state or your state will manage you. State means your emotional and psychological condition in any moment. As an entrepreneur, you're going to face crisis, doubts, long nights. How you respond is everything. Tony teaches that emotion is created by motion. Change your body and you change your mind. There's science behind this. Research has shown that adopting a confident, expansive posture, so-called power poses, for just 2 minutes can increase testosterone, which is the confidence hormone, and decrease cortisol, which is the stress hormone, making you feel more powerful and less stressed. In simple terms, stand tall, breathe deep, shoulders back, and you'll literally biochemically boost your confidence. Conversely, slouching and shallow breathing can make you feel weaker. Tony has intuitively taught this for years. At his events, before even tackling anyone's limiting beliefs, he often has them shake out their body and yell yes and adopt a posture of certainty. It might look silly, but it works by shifting the person's state. Tony also emphasizes the power of focus and meaning. What you focus on, you feel, he says. 2 people can face the exact same failure. One focuses on the loss and feels defeated. The other focuses on the lesson and feels motivated. The habit of focus is a huge separator between those who get stuck and those who innovate through challenges. As an entrepreneur, you must become a master of meaning. Tony often illustrates this with a story from that Thanksgiving incident. He and his father made very different meanings of the same event. Tony focused on the fact that strangers cared enough to give and he felt grateful and inspired. His father focused on his failure to provide and he felt shame. Each of them had a radically different emotional experience because of their focus. So ask yourself, when you're in a tough spot, what else could this mean? That's a very Tony question. Didn't lend that investor? You could tell yourself it means your idea is worthless, cue the despair music, or you could decide it means you need to refine your pitch and find a better investor, cue the determination. Tony trains people to stand guard at the door of their mind, as his mentor Jim Rohn used to say. Don't let just any thought wander in and take control. You get to choose which thoughts to focus on and which to discard. Another aspect of state is your beliefs, especially the beliefs about yourself, which Tony calls your story. Tony says them bluntly, the only thing that's keeping you from getting what you want is the story you keep telling yourself. If you keep telling yourself, I'm new, I'm young, investors won't take me seriously, or I always mess up marketing, that story will sabotage you even if you have all the skills. Tony will challenge people hard on their limiting stories because he knows a disempowering story can paralyze even the brightest person. The flip side is also true. An empowering story can uplift an average person to do amazing things. Tony's own story could have been, I'm broken from a broken home, but he chose, I'm responsible for my life and I care about others' pain, so I will heal myself and help others heal too. What a story, right? And he's lived into it. So if you struggle with negative self-talk, here's a Tony-inspired exercise. Identify the limiting story you've been telling yourself, maybe about why you can't 10x your business, or why you can't find the right business partner, or whatever. Write it down. Then ask, what is this story costing me? Really feel that. Next, create a new story that is both true and empowering, something that gets you to take action. For example, I'm not experienced enough to, I'm resourceful and I can learn anything I need to Tony swears by incantations, not just affirmations, but incantations, where you speak your new belief with total conviction using your body. It might be a bit out of your comfort zone, but speaking, I am unstoppable, I find solutions to every problem, while in a peak state, every morning can wire that belief in. Athletes do this, great speakers do this, and yes, Tony does this. He has a whole morning routine of breathing, movement, and incantations and prayer that he calls priming. So to sum it up, master your state, use your physiology, move, exercise, power poses, guard your focus, find the empowering meaning in every situation, and curate your beliefs. We need to start ditching the old story and adopt the new one that serves you. Tony's own daily energy and consistency of his performance over decades show how powerful this is. It's not that he never feels down or stressed, he's human, but he's trained himself to snap back to a peak state rapidly. As an entrepreneur, if you can do that, go from problem to solution-oriented in minutes, from fatigue to energized on command, you have a massive edge. Business is full of uncertainty. Controlling your internal environment is often the only thing you can control, and it makes all the difference. Number 2, raise your standards and take massive action. Tony Robbins is known for his high standards. He doesn't do things small or half-hearted, and he challenges others to step up their standards to achieve lasting change. One of his famous quotes is, anytime you sincerely want to make a change, the first thing you must do is raise your standards. What does that mean? It means stop accepting mediocrity from yourself. Identify what you've been settling for in your income, your health, your team's performance, and declare that it's no longer acceptable. Shoulds have to become musts. Tony often says, if you should do something, you'll never do it. But when something is a must, you find a way. So turning your shoulds into musts is the essence of raising standards. For Tony personally, raising standards showed up early when he decided he must not remain in that small apartment, overweight and broke at age 19. So here's a quick backstory. After working with Jim Rohn, Tony went through a slump where he got physically out of shape and he was struggling. He tells a story that one day he looked in the mirror, he was fed up being 38 pounds overweight, and he punched the wall because he hated the standard he was living at. That day he made a must. He must change his body and his life. He went on to lose the weight by literally running at the beach every day with his dog and changing his diet. And more importantly, he never went back to that low standard. In your life or business, what have you been tolerating? Maybe it's tolerating a disorganized workplace or a toxic client or inconsistent marketing. Raising your standard could mean you set a new baseline. We will deliver projects on time, every time from now on. Or I will meet at least 5 new prospective customers each week, no excuses. When you set that standard, you then align your entire being to meet it. However, a standard without action is just an aspiration. This is where Tony's other trademark phrase comes in. Take massive, determined action. Massive action is the cure-all. Tony firmly believes almost anything can be solved or achieved with enough action. Not random action, but purposeful, consistent action. When Tony was starting those infomercials, he didn't just make one and cross his fingers. He flooded the airways. He tested different messages. He went big. Massive action doesn't mean reckless. It means all-in, persistent effort towards your goal, adjusting as needed, but never letting up. He often shares a simple formula. To achieve something, you must 1, decide what you want. Make it a must. 2, take massive action. 3, notice what's working or not, which he calls sensory acuity. And 4, change your approach until you get what you want, flexibility. That third and fourth part add nuance. Massive action is not just brute force, it's intelligence. If one approach isn't working, massive action also means massively changing strategies until it does work. Tony is like a heat-seeking missile, locked on target but consistently course-correcting based on feedback. For example, when COVID-19 hit hard and Tony could no longer do in-person events, his entire seminar business, a major part of his brand, was at risk. At first, it looked like a disaster, but he immediately took massive action to adapt. And within a few months, he and his team engineered a state-of-the-art virtual event studio with a 360-degree screen setup, bringing thousands of people together on Zoom in a way never done before. It was the largest Unleash the Power Within seminar in 40 years. He didn't do small webinars. He went full Tony Robbins scale, even in a new medium. The result, he ended up reaching even more people globally and kept the momentum alive. Entrepreneurs face similar pivots in that time. Those who took massive, fast action thrived, while those who waited, unfortunately, faded. One more angle on massive action. Tony often says, the path to success is to take massive determined action, and he'll add, and keep changing your approach until you get there. It sounds obvious, but ask yourself, am I really taking massive action towards my top goal? Or am I kind of dabbling, just doing enough when it's convenient? If it's the latter, it's time to crank it up. Commit to making more calls in a day than you normally do. Code more hours, create more content, whatever is relevant for your business, and do it with consistency. Most people never hit their true potential because they never truly push that throttle to 100% and keep it there for a sustained period. Tony likes to use fitness metaphors. So going all out for a short time can produce more muscle growth than years of half-hearted workouts. The same in business. 1 year of massive focused effort can sometimes achieve what 5 years of normal effort would. Now, a caution. Massive action doesn't mean burnout. Tony is extremely mindful of managing his energy. He's known for his stamina, being on stage for 12 hours straight, but he also takes care of his health diligently with diets, cold plunges, etc. So as you raise your action levels, you also need to raise your standards of self-care so you can sustain it. The goal is peak performance, not running yourself into the ground. High standards apply to rest and recovery too. So to put this into practice, try this Tony-esque challenge. Write down one area in your business where you know you've been mediocre. Next, define a new standard that is your must in the next 90 days. Then list 3 massive actions you will take immediately to enforce that standard. As an example, our lead generation is weak becomes new standard. 100 qualified leads per month must be generated. Massive actions. Invest in hiring a marketing or agency this week. Personally reach out to 5 prospects every single day. Launch that referral program you've been postponing, and so on. By making it a must and backing it with massive action, you set in motion a momentum that is hard to stop. It's exactly how Tony launched new ventures or wrote books. He decided to write Money, Master the Game, and then interviewed 50 financial legends in record time. Massive action, massive research. Remember, dreams don't work unless you do, at scale. Tony became Tony by playing full out. He invites you to do the same because he knows that's when life gets exciting. And here's a motivator. Massive action tends to yield quicker results, which then motivate you into a further upward spiral. When you see progress, you get hungrier. So even if it's daunting, start that cycle. As Tony loves to say, take massive action and figure it out as you go. Waiting for perfection is just another form of procrastination. Number 3, embrace failure and learn continuously. If there's one thing that separates successful entrepreneurs from the rest, it's their relationship with failure. Tony Robbins has a very clear stance on this. There's no such thing as failure, only results. You've probably heard a version of that before, but Tony truly embodies it. In his experience coaching top performers, he found that fear of failure is the biggest obstacle that holds people back. Entrepreneurs who tiptoe around trying to avoid failure end up timid, stuck, and ironically, they fail by default because they never strive for greatness. Tony encourages a complete reframe of failure. Instead of seeing it as something negative, see it as feedback and as a stepping stone to success. Tony often shares that even in his own businesses, not every idea worked, not every seminar filled up in the early days, and not every investment paid off. But he didn't see these outcomes as permanent failures, just as data. He urges entrepreneurs to adopt what's called a growth mindset, a term that comes from psychologist Carol Dweck, the belief that skills and outcomes are not fixed and that you can improve through effort and learning. Tony's phrasing is, it's all learning. When something goes wrong, he doesn't waste time labeling himself as a failure or lamenting. He immediately asks, what can I learn from this? How can I use this? If a marketing campaign flops, that's valuable information on what your customers don't respond to. If a product launch underperforms, it's teaching you on what to improve. In a conversation about coachability, Tony said this, if you're trying anything new, failure will be constant. Those who don't fail will likely be swept up by someone more innovative. So you shouldn't fear failure because that just gets in your way. Instead, focus on learning more and more. Think about that. He's basically saying, if you're not failing regularly, you're probably not pushing hard enough or innovating enough, and someone else will pass you by. In today's fast-paced environment, constant adaptation is key, and adaptation comes from trying, from failing, from learning, and from adjusting. Tony's long-term client, Mark Benioff of Salesforce, is an interesting case. Benioff famously had a sign in Salesforce's office that said, get big fast or get eaten. That's massive action, but underlying it is the acceptance that you'll make mistakes as you move fast. You'll just correct them quickly. That's exactly how Tony runs things too. He often references a metaphor. When a rocket heads to the moon, it's off course like 90% of the time. The rocket constantly corrects its trajectory based on feedback until it reaches the destination. In the same way, your path to your goal will be off course most of the time, and that's okay if you are course correcting. Failure is just a signal to adjust, not a stop sign. So how do you put this into practice? Start by reframing the word failure itself. For your team, you might even ban the word failure and replace it with test or lesson. Encourage a culture where team members report not just their wins, but what they learned this week from experiments that did not go as expected. When something goes wrong, do a quick post-mortem. What did we learn? How can we use this? And then move on with that new wisdom. Also, examine your fear of failure. It's human to feel fear, but realize most fear of failure is actually fear of negative feelings or judgment. Tony would challenge you. What's bigger, your desire for success or your fear of embarrassment? If you truly raised your standards, point number 2, then you won't tolerate letting fear stop you. One trick Tony teaches to get over fear is to vividly imagine the consequences of not taking action. For instance, if you're afraid to launch your product, picture your company in 5 years if you keep waiting. Maybe you're out of cash, someone else stole the market, your dream evaporated. Really feel that pain. Then contrast it with the vision of success if you act. This leverage can make you say, screw it. I'd rather try and fail than never try and regret it. As Tony puts it, discipline weighs ounces, regrets weighs tons. He attributes that quote to Jim Rohn as well. You don't want the heavy weight of regret, so you take the lighter weight of disciplined action, which includes taking some lumps along the way. Here's another component, continuous learning. Tony is a learning machine. Despite being a teacher to millions, he's always a student himself. He reads voraciously, interviews experts, attends other seminars, and consumes research. He does this to be better for his clients and his companies. As an entrepreneur, the moment you think, I know it all, is the moment you're in trouble. Tony's mindset is Kanai, an acronym he uses, constant and never-ending improvement. Keep asking, how can we do better? What new skills do I need to acquire? Where is the market going? This humility and curiosity will keep you ahead. Tony also emphasizes learning from those who achieve what you want. We touched on mentorship. In business, he's learned from legends like investors Paul Tudor Jones, Sir Richard Branson, Steve Wynn, and so on by seeking them out. In a similar way, identify the giants in your field and learn everything you can about how they think and operate. The good news is, many have written books or done talks, made videos. You have access to a lot of their knowledge already. Let's not forget, Tony even learns from people he mentors. He said about coaching Paul Tudor Jones, I'd be an idiot to think I'm only mentoring him. I'm constantly learning. That's the level of openness you want. Every interaction can teach you something if you're alert to it. So here's your action step. Do something that you might fail at on purpose. Launch that pilot program in a week, even if it isn't perfect. Call a big potential client you've been intimidated to approach, or publicly announce an ambitious goal to get some accountability. Do it with a mindset that whatever the result, you'll gain. If it succeeds, fantastic. If not, you'll learn why and improve. This muscles up your failure tolerance, and over time you become desensitized to the sting of failure and actually start to treat it like a scientist does an experiment, just part of the process. That is liberating, and it's exactly how Tony operates in his ventures and personal goals. In case you didn't know, he had a tumor in his brain. That was the cause of his growth spurt. That could have given him a great excuse to slow down or live carefully, but instead he treats every day as a gift to push harder. He's not afraid of what might go wrong. He's focused on making things go right. So in summary, embrace failure's lessons and commit to lifelong learning. When you do, failure loses its fangs and becomes a friend, a tough coach that makes you better. You'll start optimizing faster than others because you're willing to try more things. You'll iterate your product or business model to excellence while others are still drafting plans out of fear of getting it wrong. Tony's life is a testament to this principle. From each setback, he came back stronger because he squeezed the lesson out of it and left the rest behind. Do the same, and no failure will ever be final for you. It will be fuel. Number 4, serving greatly is the power of purpose and generosity. We've touched on this throughout Tony's story, but it deserves its own spotlight. Service and purpose. Tony Robbins' driving force isn't money, it's mission. He often says the secret to living is giving, and he's lived by that credo since that Thanksgiving when he was 11. For entrepreneurs, this translates to a powerful lesson. Make your business about more than just profits. Profits are necessary, but they are a means, not the end. The end is the impact, the contribution, the difference you make for your customers, employees, your community, and beyond. Tony's businesses all have a thread of purpose. Whether it's helping people transform their lives, providing clean water in India, which is one of his philanthropic projects, feeding the hungry, or educating people on finance so they can have dignity in retirement, there's always a why that's bigger than the what. This does 2 things. It motivates you and your team to go above and beyond. And it also endears your brand to customers on a deeper level. People sense when a company genuinely cares. In an age where consumers are savvy and values-driven, having an authentic mission is a huge competitive advantage aside from just being the right thing to do. Think about Tony's Basket Brigade tradition. As we talked about, he's helped provide millions of meals to families in need. He doesn't make a dime from that. In fact, he donates a ton of money and time to it, but it's part of the lifeblood of his organization. When employees or partners know the person at the top is that committed to giving back, it creates a culture of generosity and loyalty. Many entrepreneurs have followed suit, integrating philanthropy into their model from early on. Salesforce, for example, adopted a 1-to-1 model. So 1% equity, 1% product, 1% employee time donated to charity. But you don't have to wait until you're rich to start giving. Tony started feeding families when he was barely making any money himself. He set aside a portion because he remembered how one meal changed his family's life. He often says, if you won't give a dime out of a dollar, don't kid yourself you'll give $1 million out of 10 million. Start giving now, wherever you are. This resonates. It's about building that muscle of contribution early. For entrepreneurs, maybe you can donate a percentage of sales to a cause aligned with your business, or simply give your time and skills to help others in your network without expecting something in return. It might seem paradoxical, but giving actually opens doors to receiving in unexpected ways. Tony's massive network of influential friends is no accident. He's been helping people for decades, so naturally, so many people want to help him or get involved in his opportunities. Also, having a purpose can pull you through really tough times. When the challenges stack up and a purely financial goal might not keep you motivated, there's only so much pain you'll go through just for money. A higher purpose will. If your goal is to, say, revolutionize education for children or bring green energy to communities, that purpose becomes a well of strength when you encounter setbacks. Tony's purpose, originally to end suffering for himself and help end suffering for others, is like a nuclear reactor inside him. It keeps him going at an age where many would retire because he's not doing it for ego or cash. He truly wants to contribute until his last breath. When you tap into a purpose that gives you goosebumps, you become virtually unstoppable. Now let's talk practically. How can you infuse more purpose and service into your business? Start with your customer. Obsess over how you can genuinely improve their life or business. Tony's secret to building raving fans: do more for your customers than anyone else. Surprise them, over-deliver, add personal touches, follow up to ensure they got results. When people feel cared for, they not only stick around, they refer others enthusiastically. Tony's entire early business grew via word of mouth from people whose lives were changed. Even with all the marketing he did, it was the heartfelt referrals that cemented his brand. Also, consider a cause that resonates with you and your team. It should be something you authentically care about. Authenticity matters. Don't just pick a charity for PR. Maybe it's related to your industry, a tech company mentoring underprivileged kids in STEM, for example. Involve your team in giving back. It's hugely morale boosting. Studies have shown that workplaces that enable employees to volunteer or contribute have higher engagement and job satisfaction. It feels good to do good. A simple human truth backed by science. Tony often shares a beautiful insight. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. You don't want to climb the ladder of success only to find it's leaning against the wrong wall. That you achieve success but feel empty because it lacked meaning. Fulfillment, he says, comes from growth and contribution. We've covered growth, continuous learning, etc., and contribution is the other side of that coin. So design your entrepreneurial journey such that you are growing and contributing along the way, not just at the end. There's also a bit of enlightened self-interest here. Generosity is a prosperity mindset. When you give freely, you're subconsciously telling yourself, I have plenty and there will always be more, which is an abundance mindset. Fearful people hoard. Successful people give and create. Tony's mentor, Jim Rohn, taught him the importance of giving even when you have little. It destroys the fear that you don't have enough. Ironically, that very act of giving tends to attract more wealth, maybe because you network with other givers, or you reinforce productive beliefs, or simply karma. Tony saw that play out in his life and in many of his wealthy friends' lives. On a day-to-day level, serving greatly can mean simply listening to people better. Tony is an excellent listener when he's coaching someone. He's fully present and focused on understanding them. As a leader, you could do the same with your employees or customers. Listen to their needs and pains. It's a huge act of service in a world where most people are too busy to truly listen. To really bring this home, remember the stat that I said before: 1/3 of successful entrepreneurs had a mentor or support group versus 14% of failed ones. This implies the successful ones were both receiving and likely giving support in networks. Humans succeed best cooperatively. Service is not only downwards like charity, but also sideways and upwards, helping peers, adding value before expecting something, mentoring others when you can. Tony still conducts free interventions on people in crowds, knowing not all of them can afford his coaching. It's a service, but also those moments often become testimonials that spread his legend, so it's a win-win. So here's an action reflection. Ask yourself, what is my company or my personal's ultimate purpose beyond making money? Why does what you do matter in the big picture? If you shut down today, who would cry, or what void would there be? If the answer is fuzzy, spend time to clarify your mission. Write it out, make it inspiring, share it with your team frequently. Let it guide your decision making. When facing a tough call, ask which option aligns more with your mission of service. And start giving in small ways now. It could be as simple as mentoring a younger entrepreneur over coffee once a week, or giving free access to your software to a nonprofit, or volunteering in your community. These acts keep you connected to humanity and prevent burnout by reminding you that your work has meaning. Tony's life demonstrates a beautiful paradox. By focusing on helping others, he himself achieved wealth and fulfillment. By believing in others, he strengthened his own belief. By giving love, he feels love constantly. The man is surrounded by gratitude from those who he's helped. In your entrepreneurial path, keep that spirit. It will make the journey joyful no matter what level of success you reach. And it ensures that when you do reach those victories, they're rich with meaning and pride, not hollow. Impact is the real scorecard that Tony cares about. And likely, deep down, it's what we all care about. So we've journeyed through Tony Robbins' life from a kid in a tumultuous home to a towering figure of inspiration and distilled the lessons that entrepreneurs like you can harness. Now it boils down to this. What will you do with this knowledge? Tony often says a life can change in a moment, the moment you make a real decision. Maybe this is that moment for you. Tony's story shows that it doesn't matter where you start. You could have every disadvantage, every reason to play small, and still choose to play big. At 17, Tony made a decision to not be a victim of his circumstances. At various points, he decided to go all in on improving himself, to take risks on new ventures, to step up, to serve when others shrank back. Those decisions, backed by action, are why he is who he is today. And now it's your turn. You have something special inside you too. Your own giant within, as Tony would say, and it's time to awaken it. Think about the struggles you faced. Maybe tough childhood experiences, failures, rejection, self-doubt. Those can be your fuel if you let them. Tony used to keep reminders of his past hardships, like that empty Thanksgiving table, not to feel bad, but to remind him why he must keep growing and giving. What pain or injustice fires you up to create change? Embrace it and commit to being the solution. I want to end with a challenge. Channeling my inner Tony and Evan together. I challenge you to take one powerful action in the next 24 hours that will move you towards your dreams. Not next month, not someday, now. It could be a phone call to that mentor or expert you've been meaning to reach out to. It could be finally registering that business, filming that product demo, or even apologizing to someone you need to make things right with so you can move forward. Do something bold. Fortune favors the bold, and clarity comes from engagement, not thought. So engage and make that move. Remember, knowledge is worthless without execution. As Tony reminds us, the path to success is to take massive, determined action. You've got some new insights and motivation here. Don't let it fade. Leverage it immediately. Take a step that commits you, that maybe even scares you a bit. That's when you know you're growing. And when you take that action, carry Tony's core belief with you, that you are in control of your destiny. Yes, you, not your parents, not the economy, not the doubters. You get to write the story from here on out. If the old chapters weren't great, use Tony's techniques. Get grateful for them because they gave you the muscles. Then write the next chapters as the hero of the story, not the victim. Also, cultivate that mindset of absolute belief in yourself and your mission. Tony has an infectious certainty when he speaks. That certainty is a result of aligning his focus, physiology, beliefs, and habits all in one direction. You can do the same. Priming your mind each morning with empowering thoughts, visualizing your outcomes, remembering your purpose. Over time, that creates an unshakable belief. And when you believe in you, others can't help but believe in you too. So, what's the vision that pulls you? See it, feel it, and step into it today. Maybe you're the next great innovator in your field or the leader of a movement that changes your community. Why not? As Tony often says, why live an ordinary life when you can live an extraordinary one? The only limits are the ones you set up in your mind or the lack of imagination to see what's possible. So you've learned how Tony turned his pain into purpose, how he met mentors who ignited him, how he built an empire by providing insane value, how he mastered his mind and heart to keep growing, and how he never forgot that serving others is the highest calling. Take these lessons to heart, apply them. They work. They've been proven, not just by Tony, but by countless other successful entrepreneurs who follow similar principles of mindset, passion, and perseverance. In the end, success in business and in life isn't about avoiding mistakes or catching lucky breaks. It's about consistently showing up as your best self, learning and adapting and contributing to something meaningful. Tony Robbins turned his life around and has guided millions to do the same. He believes in the power of the individual, the power in you. And you know what? I do too. You have everything it takes to make your dream a reality, or to dream even bigger than you've allowed yourself before. Don't let anyone, especially that inner critic, tell you otherwise. Step up, take charge, and let your actions proclaim your faith in your mission. Do it, and your future self will thank you. Tony likes to end his talks with energy and a decisive call to action. So here it is. Decide who you are, decide what you want, and go after it with all you've got. You can script a new story starting today, one of courage, growth, and impact. It's your life, and it's happening right now. So unleash your power, live your passion, and remember, the only limit is the one you set for yourself. I'll leave you with one of Tony's favorite words, and mine: believe. To watch the incredible story of Elon Musk, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there. Elon Musk had lost everything. His companies were collapsing, SpaceX had 3 rocket failures, Tesla was on the brink of bankruptcy. He was out of money, sleeping on a friend's couch, and days away from total failure.